Well, hello, White Sox fans, and welcome to another edition of the FutureSox podcast. My name is Ian Eskridge. Joining me this evening is Mr. James Fox. How are you, James?
I'm good, sir. What's going on?
Doing all right. How'd you enjoy that Super Bowl last night?
Yeah, talk about a butt whooping, right? Like it's every level of that sport. If you get murdered up front, you lose. So that's what happened.
Yeah, it was not ever really close, you know?
Did you have a favorite commercial? I think there's one clear one that's better than all, but
Hmm. I liked a couple of them. I don't have, I don't have one that was particularly my favorite, but I got laughs out of quite a few of them. The stupidest one that I liked was the seal one.
that's awesome. That one's awesome.
Yeah, it was so dumb, but
Yeah,
I found it
it was
very
awesome.
funny.
Yeah, I'll ask Sean this later too, probably.
All
But
right.
no, I think the Matt Damon David Beckham one was awesome.
That was good
That
as
that was
well.
my favorite one.
The dig on Ben Affleck was made
Yeah,
me
it's
laugh.
perfect. Right.
It was
Yeah.
good. So speaking of, joining us this evening is CHGO's very own Sean Anderson. Let's go ahead and bring him out here. Sean, how you doing?
Honestly, I'm flustered because James is now throwing me for a loop. I was paying more attention to the game
You don't have to
and
do it
not the
now.
commercials. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I can skim this Yahoo article a little bit more.
Yeah, that
I
would be fine.
did end up sending an email to Bill Murray because you know what? When you are in media and
Yeah.
you get any chance to possibly book Bill Murray, you have to send an email. And he did like a live stream reading the emails, and there was like a automated message back. So I'll go with the Bill Murray one because Bill Murray sent me an auto email back.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that is good.
He's not coming on CHGO Bears, but we'll live to fight another day.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you could get Matthew McConaughey. You know?
Oh, right, because he did the Dick William Perry thing. Yeah,
Yes, I don't know. Like there was a bunch of entertaining stuff last night, and Beef Loaf agrees here.
Yeah,
Says
that one was pretty good. Mountain
Yeah.
Dew. Yeah.
Pretty ridiculous.
I was born before Seal, so like I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go crazy for the Seal thing. I feel like maybe they could have made Seal as a talking seal, or maybe just like Seal more human and posing like a seal. I don't know.
Yeah, I was not born.
I wasn't in the room.
I was not born after Seal. And I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm not going to apologize for being old. 2025 is rapidly approaching the 2025 baseball season here. Pitchers and catchers report shortly. So I know that we've all been kind of avoiding talking about the White Sox. Well, at least James and I generally avoid talking about the White Sox as a major league team. We generally talk about the org as much as possible. But you're here because we want to talk White Sox with you, Sean.
Yeah, I mean, and that's my job. So I'm excited to talk about the White Sox whenever we can.
All right. So, do you have any just your overall offseason thoughts about the White Sox as a whole? Luis Robert trade rumors, all that kind of stuff that is kind of going to be dying off here. Well, Luis Robert trade rumors probably not. That'll probably continue for a while. But the offseason stuff, you got any overall thoughts?
Yeah, I think being both objective and fair, it was a very boring offseason for the Chicago White Sox. Venable was like a blip of interest, mainly because there was some drama on if they would get him or not. And now that that drama's over, he's kind of just another manager, I guess, until, spring actually starts up. So it's tough to get like super excited about their big addition. But then again, like Chris Getz said before the offseason, we're not going to do shit. And here they are, not doing anything. It's a little refreshing. I don't know if it's like going to have anybody tuning in for the 2025 White Sox. I still think they need to prove that Getz is a truly new regime, that this isn't just lip service, that this isn't just, oh, we're going to send, 50 million down, down south in the international markets and try to build those up. and then that's it. Like, hopefully this is something that they continue to build and build up on, but it's just time is going to tell that. And, it's tough to really give my stamp of approval yet because it seems like it's the right direction, but Jerry Reinsdorf's still the owner. So,
yeah, I mean, do you like feel any different about Chris Getz like at this point? That's the
I'm
thing
willing,
that I'm wrestling with,
I think I'm willing to give him a chance. I think especially, what was it, August 23rd when Jerry fired Rick and Kenny, and then like 10 days later, or 8 days later, he's putting Getz as the GM. Like, at that point, I hated Chris Getz because that was Jerry's guy. I feel like he's worked himself away a little bit from Jerry, and maybe that's because I haven't seen Jerry in like a year and a half since he last fired Rick and Kenny. But when it comes to adding to a true championship contender, just like the Orioles are looking at right now, will Jerry Reinsdorf be there to sign the checks? We don't know. And, history tells us that that's not going to happen unless he's trying to spite the players in 1994. So I don't know. I like what he's doing, but also being the Rays and being the Brewers, I think is like a different breed. And that's not the White Sox. Being the White Sox will take spending a little bit of money. And again, I just don't know if that's ever going to happen with this team.
No, I mean, they definitely can't act like one of those small market teams because they don't get those same perks, right? But I mean, I guess I do kind of feel like he's an internal hire, but everything he's done has been stuff that an external hire would do. So it's like kind of weird, I guess, that he's like got to kind of put his stamp on this thing. Like, I get this every day. You probably do too. Like, I talk about the prospects and it's like, oh, well, they don't develop any players, or it's always like, like the assumption that just because they haven't been able to do anything the last 20 years that'll continue. Like, I don't know if these development people can develop players, but they're not the same people that were here before. Like, it is entirely different other than Jerry. And that part, like the skepticism will and should remain. Like, that's fine. Like, our only hope is that Chris Getz has identified that he has to, develop his top starting pitchers, a shortstop, a center fielder, and then maybe he can buy a left fielder, a first baseman, and a number 3 starter and a closer at some point, right? Like that's the path it has to be. And hopefully he understands that.
Well, right. And I think at least with Getz, it seems like he turned over a decent amount. I think the only people that are still here that were under Rick and Kenny were Katz, who is good friends with Bannister. So that explains that relationship. Jershly, who still has a job. I don't know what Mike Jershly did, but apparently he's a saint in the White Sox. Yeah, he's a saint in the White Sox organization. And then the other one, now I'm blanking on it. Okay, well now Getz himself. Like, those are the people that were hired under Rick.
Marcus Timms.
Was Timms under Rick?
No, Getz hired all those people.
Oh, did Getz?
Yeah, that was Getz's first year last year under Pedro.
Yeah, there's really not many people left. Like some minor league instructors and stuff that they kept, but other than that, like it's pretty much all different.
And I mean, the biggest thing that people brought up when he was hired, Getz, was he was a assistant minor league director. What was his actual title?
Getz was the player development director, but I mean, under Rick and Kenny, there's just like all we're hearing about now is how none of these departments were linked together and everybody was like kind of on their own island. So Getz didn't do a very good job, and that's why none of us wanted him to get to get hired. But it does seem like Paul Janisch, whether he's good or not, is working with all of the other departments to ensure that like they're at least doing, what that like it's perceived they should be doing to like develop players, instead of like, hey, how are you guys doing down there on the amateur side? Oh, okay, how are you guys doing on the internet? Like, it's nuts, like even thinking about how they did this before.
Yeah, and then two, like when you look at least 2021, they spent like 185 on that team. I wonder if that team wasn't in contention and Rick allocated money towards like what he should have been allocating on, or at least what Getz thought he should have been allocating on. Like, what is that true salary at? Like, I don't know what this team will actually spend when they're true contenders, because maybe Getz wants to allocate money still to, the minor league and international side, and that will take away. And maybe, even then 10 years from now, they're still max budget is 175. So it's tough to grade them.
Yeah. And like, they spent what, 35 or 40%, something like that on the bullpen with that team.
Yes.
It's just mind-boggling. And Chris Getz was asked if he was going to sign a guy for $100 million. And James and I talked about this last week. Is okay, yeah, you can sign a guy for $100 million, but if you sign him for 6 years, is that really signing a guy for? I mean, technically it is, but are we really spending $100 million on a guy if it's spread out over so long? We'll see what they end up doing here. Speaking of the Will Venable hire, so what do you think about the staff that Venable and Getz have assembled? Not to mention the other front office hires and the Walker McKinven thing. What are your thoughts on what's going on over there as far as the staff?
Again, it's as excited as you can be about a baseball staff. Like when you look at the Bears and you can go watch Lions tape and be like, oh, look at the great mind of Ben Johnson. You could see the way that he's putting, Jameson Williams in spots to be fast, or Jahmyr Gibbs to get out in the flats or whatever, and then be able to use his quickness and speed to get around people. Or use Montgomery with his power when he needed to. It's really just Ryan Fuller is going to have to tell, Colson Montgomery, we're going to have to shorten up your swing and maybe slow it down a little bit to gain more contact so you can be a guy that hits like 270. Maybe your homer power outage goes to like 15 or 20 instead of being at 30, but you're going to be a Major League Baseball player. Like that also might take like 2 months for it to click in with Colson. So like I'm excited about the fact that they went outside and they've brought people from many different organizations. McKinven from the Brewers, Fuller from the Orioles, obviously Barfield and Bannister Pryor from the NL West teams. Like it's intriguing. There was obviously the influx of Royals people, but now that we've gone away from that, I think I'm fine with Gene Watson and who's the other guy? I think he's more just behind the scenes.
Jin Wong is
Wong.
He's the contract guy.
Right.
So that's fine.
And what contracts are they signing right now? So we really don't know anything that Jin Wong has done so far.
He negotiated the Martin Perez deal, I think.
Okay, perfect. moving that player option. But yeah, I think that. I lost my train of thought, Ian.
Just on the hires we're talking about. I mean,
oh, right. Like I'm glad they went outside of the organization so they can get true feedback on this is what's going wrong. I think the one hire that like I'm still kind of iffy though on is Keller, and maybe you could talk a little bit more about that, James, because you brought up like going to December 15th, they're going to have like I think it was what $750,000 still left.
They had
700,000+,
yeah, and they didn't do anything with it.
Right, and it's like
and it vanishes. Like it's
better be a great Dominican academy they're building, like the best Dominican academy out there. Like I don't know, it feels like it's a changing of the guard, but is the guard better? It feels like they're at least expanding a little bit from where our guy I'm blanking
Marco
on his
Patti,
name
yeah.
now. Marco Patti was at, where he was just hammering Cuba over and over again. But still, like, they're not that present on the Asian markets, and that might take 2 to 3 years to even get expanded over there. So it's just sucks that we're in this deep of a rebuild. But again, speaking to what you said, it does feel like an outside hire at this point with Getz, because there's so many outside people collaborating on this one team.
Yeah, I think that also there's there's going to be that gap of a year until that Dominican, academy is done. So that $750,000, I bet you that had they already had it built, they probably would have just gone out and got some arms to kind of fill out the rotation and try and get some innings there for a second team, because we've theorized that we can see a second Dominican team coming with a new academy without having that extra space. They can't sign these extra guys, so that probably also doesn't help. But then you hear about them having a plan of what they're going to do with this money, and then it just up and disappears because apparently nobody actually wanted that money or wanted to or had somebody that was worth signing to deal that money to them. So
yeah, they probably thought that like there was a chance that Sasaki was going to sign like in the last period, and then they could easily trade it. And then once that didn't happen, like they weren't really able to do anything. I mean, it's still kind of ridiculous though. But even like in this class, like this is a class full of Marco Patti's players. We're going to talk to Ben Badler about this actually later this week for a like a separate episode that we're doing. So that's good. But Sean, I know I remember like listening to you guys like after the Venable hire, because I listened to everybody, because I wanted to find out if everybody was like as shocked as I was that they were able to like pull it off, right? And we've kind of talked about, like we talked about Ben Johnson, but we talked about like Will Venable too, because I guess I just kind of like Will Venable was always talked about as like the next guy that's like a candidate everywhere, right, for every opening. And then the White Sox hired him somehow. Like when he was first mentioned by John Heyman, I kind of laughed, and I think I told Ian, I'm like, "Oh, Will Venable, that's funny." Like, and then like a couple weeks later, like they hired Will Venable. I was stunned. So I thought they deserve credit for that. Now, what did you guys think about that?
Yeah, no, I think absolutely Getz deserves credit. I mean, I don't think Venable's here if Getz isn't here. And it's weird to hear that. And I think one thing I wanted to get from Venable when Vinny interviewed him, and we didn't really get this specific question out of him, but something I would still be willing to ask him is just like, what is Chris Getz's resume or kind of cachet around the league? Because it's been brought up by Bannister and Barfield and Venable, like by like several people that, Chris Getz is a name around the league. So I do wonder, like, how much weight does he hold? And also the fact that they're both former players. I feel like that is just such a huge thing for former players, guys that have that background, that similar thing that they can just rely on and relax on. I know it's like kind of minor, but like the way that they keep talking about it over and over and over again, it feels important enough. So the fact that Chris is a former player and he feels just kind of comfortable in this spot, I think that's why Venable came over. And you listen to Venable too. Venable didn't seem like he would be comfortable going to a New York or going to a Cleveland because they had expectations. I think Will Venable, even though everyone else thought of him as a managerial candidate, I don't think Venable thought of himself as a managerial candidate unless it was in the right spot. And coming to a city he's comfortable in, plus with the GM he's comfortable with, and then I think also no expectations at all. I think it ended up being like a perfect marriage, when you actually break it down. Because from the outside, they shouldn't have hired him, because this isn't like the Bears with Caleb Williams. This is a stinking pile of garbage. And Will Venable somehow chose the stinking pile of garbage, but also the only other job was a stinking pile of garbage just in Miami. So one's going to sink into the sea and one has fresh water for like 100 years. It's pretty easy to pick Chicago.
Well, I think they got lucky. I think Bruce Bochy like made it clear that he wasn't going to leave anytime soon. It's funny. Beef like put a comment in that said Chris Getz is a master of seduction, and I kind of talked about this with him too recently. It's just like for all the people, and look, like I get it. Like we came on this show, we were very like skeptical of the Chris Getz hire, right? And for everybody that thinks Chris Getz sucks, like it might be true. Like they may not develop players, like all these guys might suck, but like there sure are a lot of very qualified, talented people that for some reason feel like working with Chris Getz. And I don't know. I don't know what it is, because it's like, oh, that seems like a good hire. Oh, that seems like a good hire. Like this magical plan that he has been sold to all these people, and they've all like bought it at a minimum.
Well, and it's not all his doing, but still, he's sitting in his second year as GM with the second best prospect system according to ESPN. I think Kylie's full of it on that, but still, like, I mean, he's in a pretty good spot, and I didn't think he would be at this point, when he was hired in 23.
So speaking of this recent offseason that we've just had, I know that it is a lot of big names to choose from, but are there any acquisitions so far this offseason that have you intrigued?
I think it's the old as seen on TV, but wait, there's more. I've been comparing the White Sox to a bottom feeder at the Mariana Trench, and there's just going to be some veteran that just wants to start so badly and will, I think, land on the White Sox for under that Martin Perez or at that Martin Perez level. I think JD Martinez would make sense. If you don't have to play Ramos, and Ramos can move to AAA and just have him, gain confidence in the first 2 months. And then you can actually have like a true major league DH in JD Martinez, who last year just hit 15 home runs in like 120 games, or in 120 games. I think that'd be like one of the true final smart signings they can do. Outside of that though, like I think Brandon Jury's kind of interesting. I know he was terrible last year in like 90 something games. And the fact that what really held him back was just a sprained hamstring makes me concerned. But the previous 2 years, he put up like 4 WAR.
I know
It was
he was
around
good. He was good the
110
2 years before. Yeah.
like 28 homers and 30 doubles, and then 26 homers and 30 doubles. And then that last year, too, he had like 5 outs above average at second base. So I don't think they might necessarily look for him to play defense, but if he's healthy, he might be able to play an all right second base. But if not, he could be that DH level, like a JD Martinez, but much cheaper.
I mean, it's definitely like bargain bin hunting, but like I do think like it's going to be interesting to see if Ryan Fuller truly does get more out of someone, right? He said that they want to be like this place where like, oh, you were good for 5 years and then you sucked for a year and a half. Like, come to the White Sox and like we'll fix you, or like Ryan Fuller will fix you. And he's talked about that, like how the Orioles were that. Like, I mean, even looking at like an Austin Slater, like what he did against lefties in his career in San Francisco. Like if he does that again, like he's probably the best player on the team, So like even like him, Talkman, there's just like a whole host of guys where all of a sudden, in June somebody has like a 118 WRC plus on this White Sox team, and you're like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I just have no idea who it's gonna be.
Well, and from what we've heard too, is Robert has his own hitting coach. Like, it'd be great if he listened to somebody within the organization and trusted someone within the organization. I don't know if Getz is going to say, hey, knock that off, or if Fuller is able to connect with them. But if Fuller's able to make that connection and we see the Robert of 2023, or maybe the Robert he wanted to be in 2024, he was like, I'm only going to hit inside pitches. And that really just got away from him after June. Like, if he snaps back to that, and that's due to the help of Fuller, like, I mean, he's going to make believers out of everyone in Chicago, but also too, like, not even with the like fringe signings, like Colson Montgomery just had a terrible year. Please fix Colson Montgomery. I don't know exactly what Fuller needs to work with him on. I was looking at some of his like StatCast minor league searches. And it seems like he really struggles like up and in middle, and then up and in like high and in. So like, and obviously we know he struggles with velocity in general. So maybe it is just pitch selection or just being a little bit earlier on those pitches. But also, I saw a video from Foolish Baseball where he broke down Kerry Carpenter, who kind of turned into like a postseason legend for the Tigers in 2024. And he went down to AAA, and it was all about slowing his swing down and shortening it up. I don't know if that's exactly going to be Colson's, but he's just so big, long. There's so many levers that maybe if you just simplify those a little bit, Colson will just make a little bit more contact, and just naturally, because he's got 6'4" levers, he'll be able to drive the ball. So I think it's just top to bottom. Can Ryan Fuller help people walk and finally drive the ball in Chicago? Because it feels like it's been a long time since we had true boppers. Like, I mean, who's the last person to hit 30 homers? Was it Abreu?
Oh man, it has to be, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think I just saw the other day, like the last person to hit 40 was like
no, Robert
Dunn or something.
Robert hit 30.
Oh, Robert hit 30, right?
Yeah, 2 years ago. Yeah. Hey, Ian, do you think there's any chance that Ryan Fuller is like makes Andrew Vaughn good enough to get traded for something?
You heard rumors last year that there was a possibility that people, like the Yankees were interested in Andrew Vaughn. Why? I have no idea. But I mean, there was a rumor that was happening, or not that it was happening, but that at least there was some interest there. Todd Frazier was the last one to hit 40. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, that's
2016.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough when you are the tilapia of MLB and are just feeding right off the bottom for everything. It's tough.
Can you pull up this from Vince before we do like roster battles and storylines? So
this one,
so this is one of the big storylines and I want to ask Sean about this. What do you think happens with Luis Robert? Because I have my theory now, and whether he'll be here, whether it's that the White Sox sent out a tweet yesterday, like after the World Series or after the Super Bowl, and it was Luis Robert in it, which I think is the first time they featured him all off season. So maybe now they are stuck keeping him. But what do you think happens with Robert here?
I think honestly the only reason they're making videos with him is because he's on the team and there's no videos of anyone else on the team. I mean, maybe what Vaughn, but and Corey Lee, but will he even be on the 2025 team? Yeah, I think with Robert, and I don't think Vince is wrong on saying the Reds are being aggressive, but it seems like they even pivoted after those talks broke down, signing, it wasn't Mancini. He went to the Diamondbacks, but whoever they
They
signed.
signed Austin Hayes.
Austin Hayes. So it seems like they've gone away from it. I don't hate the idea of them building up value because that was supposed to be the piece. It wasn't supposed to be Cease. It wasn't supposed to be Crochet. It wasn't supposed to be Giolito and Reynaldo Lopez turning into your catcher of the future. It was supposed to be Luis Robert Jr. And I'm very surprised that no one's taking a gamble on him for 15 million years or for 15 million a year. And even then too, I mean, it would be what, 17 million if you're including the $2 million buyout for 2026. So I'm just shocked that no one's taken that gamble. And the fact that the proposed deal was Arroyo plus Arroyo for Robert plus cash makes me sick to my stomach because that is supposed to be our franchise, our center fielder. I feel like the Angels could probably get more for Mike Trout right now than Luis Robert Jr. So I am kind of grossed out at where Robert's market is because I was talking, I think even June of just the last year being like, oh, we could get, and this shows my prospect knowledge. We could get Painter from the Phillies, Miller from the Phillies. I wanted to throw Popeye Rodriguez in there for fun. And then I think Caba, right?
Yeah.
Caba is one of their Phillies prospects. So like that was just June. So now we've gone from, the Phillies top two prospects plus to Arroyo and us giving Cincy cash. I feel like there's no reason to just, not let him play out 2025. And then if he's that bad where you can't even trade him for anything, just buy him out and let him be a free agent. Because I mean, you have to have him hit in some way.
Yeah, I mean, I generally think like the Cincy stuff is out there for a reason. Like this, the White Sox always do this, but I also think like I think they're scared to death of Luis Robert being bad again. And like if it were up to them, they would trade him before the season starts. But you can't trade him and eat money and get Edwin Arroyo back. Like you can't. That's not enough. So if that's the case, like keep him and just hope that he's fine and good and you can trade him for more later. But I think they didn't want to do it with Cease either. And I feel like this time it's similar where if they get a deal they like and not a deal they love, I think they'll probably make it. It doesn't seem like anybody's like kicking the door down at this point.
The Cubs willingly gave Matthew Boyd $15 million, and no team will willingly give Luis Robert Jr. to play. I mean, he's a fine center fielder as he is. When he gets on, he could steal you 20 bags. Like already there, he's got value. It's not like he's worthless. And then if he finally just wakes up at the plate, I mean, we know what he can do. It's just, I think being on the 2024 White Sox gave him zero motivation at all, which is obviously a fear. And it just kind of leads to, will the White Sox ever get that value? Because if he's bad again in 2025, I think they'll just, again, let him go. He's a free agent in 2026. He's going to have a 5-WAR season again somewhere.
I think it'll be interesting also to find out how Will Venable can motivate these guys if these soft tissue injuries that have been coming up over the last few years are somewhat more mentally motivated than they are physically motivated, where they don't feel like the, somebody pressing them to continue playing through these injuries and, being able to continue to play. Difference between being hurt and injured. I mean, we saw bad, people out there, we saw Luis Robert out there swinging with one arm. So I'm not saying that necessarily that's, that it's all the injuries, but, you have to wonder when you start seeing all these hamstring injuries, what the heck's going on. So, does anybody else want to necessarily receive these guys in a trade, knowing that these guys keep on having all these soft tissue injuries, which a lot of the time become chronic, So.
Right. And two, I think that might be one of the other departments that might have been untouched by Getz is I think Kruk is still the head of training and strength and conditioning. So, I mean, how much is that department been overhauled, and will they still have similar issues? Hopefully, again, all of the underbelly work that Getz has done would be able to clean up guys in their mid 20s getting injured because they're eating too much Domino's and Papa John's getting delivered to their mansions. Like, I think if there's a little bit more common sense, maybe some of those lingering issues go away. But also, I mean, Eloy's just gone. Yoan's just gone. Maybe Luis did have some sort of wake up call, and those lower body injuries miraculously go away. But I mean, even then, it was still Tim. It was Yasmani. The team's younger, so maybe that helps your question, Ian. Brooks Baldwin's 23, so maybe he doesn't have arthritis in his knee yet.
Yeah, let's hope not. We still have Andrew Vaughn, who does play, but his legs are always tired. So there's that as well. So moving past this off season and moving into spring training here, is there any storylines coming up in spring training that have piqued your interest at all?
I'm interested to just see who's going to be the fourth and fifth starter. It seems like Cannon, Martin, and Perez are going to take shape at the top of the rotation in some way. I would have Cannon be the opening day starter and then go Perez and Martin. If you want to go Martin, sure. I know my guy Herb Lawrence is thinking that he's going to be an all-star in 2025. More power to you, Herb Lawrence and Davis Martin. But I think, one, where's Thorpe at? Will Thorpe be able to start opening day? There's no rush for him either. So if he's in Charlotte, I do not care. But then does that mean Sean Burke gets a little bit more of a chance to be on the opening day roster? And then do they go out and get another starting pitcher at all? Again, if they are waiting for people to fall to the bottom, like, I really like Spencer Turnbull. I thought that he would have been a good signing last year. He goes to Philly, 17 games. He's got like a 2.94 ERA. I know that there was like 7 games started and then 17 total. So like 10 of them were out of the bullpen, but that's a guy that could be effective and maybe effective to a point where you could trade him by the deadline if he's not hurt. There's a ton of injury issues, but still, I mean, the Tigers are willing to gamble on Jack Flaherty. I'm kind of willing to gamble on Spencer Turnbull. So I think it's interesting to just see how those final 4 spots will play out, because you got Shane Smith too. Will they keep him on the 26th, or will they have to send him back to Milwaukee? And then also you got Bryce Wilson, who signed a major league deal, a rarity for this 2025 team. It was still like $1.05 million or something like that. Is he actually a starter? And, is that like a Walker McKinnon thing where, he's going to be able to be caught right and that's going to lead to success? Because he was really consistent over the last 2 years. I think like if you just combine his 2 years, they pretty much repeat. Like same K per 9, same walk per 9. Like he's just consistent. So, maybe that's a baseline guy and he replaces Flexen, and there you go. And if they're saving that money on Flexen too, Flexen's still a free agent. He probably would have gotten like north of 2. So if they're saving like $1 million on, they're starting 5, I guess that's good for Getz, right? If you're trying to manage budget and everything.
Pertaining to Drew Thorpe, Ethan Katz said recently, I think it was on the Recap podcast, said that he's kind of day to day and they just have to be smart about how they roll him out. So I don't think that there's going to be any major holdups. He just might be lagging a little bit behind in spring training, which personally I'm not that worried about, but I guess we'll see.
Did you get through that whole Ethan Katz interview?
I tell you what, man, it was pretty rough.
Ooh. Now,
it was long.
I really liked Cap and Guff doing the interview with Getz, and then Cap was gone. I mean, they replaced him with Brian Anderson. And what Brian doesn't understand is you're not being asked the questions, Brian Anderson. We don't care about your career. Ask Ethan a question. And I don't think Brian Anderson watched the 2024 White Sox or the 2023 White Sox or the 2022 White Sox, maybe the 2021 White Sox, but like the Field of Dreams game. So yeah, I got 19 minutes into that interview and started bashing my head against my steering wheel.
That's not good. Like at all.
It's effective, James.
Yeah,
man. It works.
How,
it does the trick.
How many minor league offers do you think Chris Getz has out to actual players right now?
Every single one. Every single one that's not signed.
This entire market full of like guys who should be on teams right now. Chris Getz is like, hey, we got a spot for you.
He's sent out a minor league deal to Bregman.
Yeah, like the Jose Quintanas and like whoever, right? Like there's just a whole bunch of guys who right now are not going to get paid at this point. So yeah, I'm kind of curious to see that if they just like have random signings like every day for the next 2 weeks or so.
Yeah, Quintana's weird. I'm surprised that he didn't get a real chance. Heaney makes sense because he's had so many like injury issues, but like when you're looking at true innings eaters, like I mean Lance Lynn, there's talk of him becoming a closer.
Closer, yeah.
Flexen, I think, just hit his innings or his career high with 160, and that was pretty much just because he was on a 41 and 121 team. And then above him is Gibson, who's been doing this for 15 years, and Corbin, whose arm fell off last year. Like Quintana seems like the best true like inning eater left, and with all the weird pitching contracts given out, I'm surprised he hasn't found a single home because he seemed like he sort of found it. And in like a Martin Perez Texas All-Star 2022 way. Like I'm surprised he hasn't gotten another.
Well, I guess so. I assumed from the beginning that Jose Quintana would be like way out of the White Sox price range. But it's what, February 10th, and he's not signed. So, I mean, I guess if all of a sudden he signed like a 1 year, $11 million deal with somebody, I'd be like, okay, I guess it's like not that surprising. But at this point, man, I don't know. Like, I don't know what the deal is.
My guess is he probably re-signs with the Mets. Is my guess.
Yeah, and they've kind of done a lot of this like patching, like the Mets have.
Yeah, the pitching is not as is probably not where it needs to be for them to have aspirations of a world title. So that's my guess.
Yeah, but whoever's available at the deadline, they'll just go trade for that guy.
Fair enough, but they still need somebody to get them to that point, right?
Yeah. Do you guys think Clevenger's going to be back on an NRI? Do I have to?
God.
No,
I think he's
still in the top 50.
I think he's done finally.
Yeah, you'd hope. I mean, he just
doesn't make any sense. But
he's
it
never
didn't
healthy
last year either. So.
Yeah, I think the other name too that's interesting is Junis. I mean, there were so many offseason project plans that included Jacob Junis. I think even my Sox Summer, shout out to B-Flow from the chat, had Jacob Junis coming back. I'm surprised that he's still out there and hasn't been signed. And I don't think he's going to be an NRI or a minor league deal. Like that's some of these guys just like that's the problem of baseball, and that's the problem with the CBA is that you have Jacob Junis and Jose Quintana, like true veterans that should be on any staff that are just finding trouble to find a 1 year deal, let alone Bregman, who's struggling to find like a 4 year deal.
Well, so I know the White Sox were in on Jacob Junis, and I don't know what so I know that he is kind of reluctant to pitch out of the bullpen, even though he was really good in that role. So I don't know if he was like waiting to see if he could start somewhere. I think he like actually turned down money. Like he declined his side of an option for like $6 million or something, which looks like a mistake right now. But we'll have, I would imagine that there will be more signings here as camps open because there are still a ton of recognizable names that are out there and available.
I think the Junis thing was similar to the Perez thing. It was guaranteed $7 million in the form of $4 million salary in 2024 and a $3 million buyout.
Okay.
On a mutual option for 25.
Okay.
So we've talked about the starting five or the pitching depth that the White Sox have in the rotation. Are there some roster battles that you're really looking forward to seeing who comes out on top and all that?
The most important position is shortstop. Who the hell is the White Sox shortstop on 2025 or on opening day in 2025? I think it could be Mydroff, but he's not on the 40 man. I think it could be Amaya, who they just picked back up, but also they DFA'd him earlier this offseason. And then Getz has been talking about Colson. I think that's suicide. Either they think that he is kind of done and they just want to see what they have in Colson Montgomery and they bring him up as the opening day starting shortstop, or they truly think he's still a project and can grow and they put him in Charlotte. I think it's stupid and idiotic to even entertain a guy that hit 214 in the effing international league. It's not even like the PCL. I don't know. It's such a disgusting disgusting battle that even Baldwin's going to compete for that too, that I think that has to be the headliner. Cause like the catchers, it's like, well, will Narvaez have enough juice in the tank to kind of, respark what he found with McKinven in Milwaukee? Like that's interesting, but at the end of the day, it's just Corey Lee stepping in. Like I have no idea February 10th, who is going to be the starting shortstop for the White Sox in just 37 days.
I tried to put together 13 position players. And I just
I
like
did
I
that
have
today.
no idea. Yeah, like even if you were like going through like the locks, like it's like 6 guys. Like I don't, you know what I mean? Like cuz like you have like Lenine Sosa who look like I think deserves to be on the team, but like I don't know what they think about him, right? So it's like the 2 veteran outfielders you signed plus Benintendi and Robert for sure, both catchers, Rojas and Vaughn. And after that, I don't know. I mean, there's just a whole host of guys like competing. That's where like when you sign a Brandon Drury and you're like, well, he's on the team because like he's one of the 13 for sure, you would think.
He was one of my names that I put on there
Right.
just because I think Ramos could just start in Charlotte.
Yeah.
And then that way you could have Drury be your DH. But yeah, I have Tice, Vargas, Robert, Benny, Slater, Talkman, Rojas, and Vaughn. That's the 8.
You
And
need
other
5
than
you need 5 more.
right. And I and I don't know who that ends up being. Like I think Baldwin probably has a pretty decent shot of making it just because of the versatility. He can play second, short, third, corners if you need him to. I think that makes sense. And then Sosa too. Like, are you just really gonna let it? Like, he has that good of a September. You're just gonna kill it. Like, I feel like you got to give him that opportunity because you're the White Sox. It's not.
Yeah.
You saw
It's
the
not
Venezuelan League. You
I
saw
did
it.
see the Venezuelan league. Like he's been great. Like I think just why not? I mean, you saw Romy get cut, and Romy was picked up by the Red Sox, and they turned him into an actual ball player. Like I don't know if that's exactly going to happen with Lenine, but could he go out and just hit the hell out of the ball for a couple teams? Maybe. I think Sosa's worth keeping.
Sosa's also out of options, so
Right.
he'll either be on the team or elsewhere. I mean, would you rather have Sosa like play every day against lefties or Andrew Vaughn? Like I mean, I kind of know my answer. I mean, like I don't need Sosa to play defense, but he seems like, one more shot to see if he can do what he did because this team's bad, obviously. So
I was talking about that today though with the infield position battles, and someone asked about with Gavin going to San Diego, like who's going to be the backup at first baseman, and I think you're right that it's likely Sosa unless they want to throw out Narvaez or Tice there, or maybe they throw Sosa there,
Yeah.
but I think they're going to let Vaughn just hit versus lefties and righties. If he's your first pick, you're paying him $5 million, the 4th highest salary on this team. Like he's got to hit from both sides of the plate, I think, or at least that's going to be part of the work with Ryan Fuller is, hey, you're going to have to hit righties, you're going to have to hit lefties, and prove that you can actually be a first baseman in this league.
Well, and that's where like too, everybody's right-handed too, right? So even if like you want to give Tim Elko a shot, he's right-handed. Bobby Dahlbeck is right-handed.
Right.
Like there's not a left-handed hitting first baseman, which I kind of thought they would have, unless tomorrow they sign Anthony Rizzo or something. I don't know.
That's what I want to see, Sean. That's what I want to see.
Is what Rizzo?
I'm good on Rizzo. I'd rather see Dahlbeck. No, yeah. I mean, no. I mean, I guess because he's really only lefty left.
You don't want to see Bobby Dahlbeck.
I not only do I want to see, I would rather see Bobby Dahlbeck play shortstop for the White Sox than Rizzo play first for the White Sox.
Yeah,
he played a little bit in Worcester.
What do you think? What are the chances that they just play Josh Rojas at short? And they're just like, yeah, this is what we're doing.
He hasn't played there in 2 years.
I know.
Oh, like I know. That's the thing is, I mean, I guess hey, they didn't play. He hasn't played there for 2 years. But also, I don't think Linky Lopez had for the past 2 years. I mean, he comes over and they're starting him at short. So I guess it's not out of the possibility, but I don't understand if at that important of a position, if Brooks is there, play Brooks. Give him those reps and that opportunity. You're going to be losing games. Guys know that you're going to be kicking balls, even if it's Rojas there behind them. So I'm fine with it. I'd kind of be bugged if they gave Rojas any time at shortstop because, again, that should be a young guy's position. Even if it's Colson, let it be Colson. If it's going to be Mydroth, let it be Mydroth too, because if Colson's going to be the future of the shortstop, when is Mydroth ever going to play shortstop? You kind of just don't know if he's ever going to be a shortstop or not because he played enough, I think, in Worcester to get at least an opportunity to play shortstop at the majors.
I think he's great behind the pitchers. They loved having him play defense, but if you look at all the metrics for Mydroth, the range isn't spectacular by any means, and the arm's not either. And that's why they generally everywhere has him slotted for second base because of those two reasons.
Yeah. I feel like it's gonna be Montgomery for like 130 plus games, but I'd still be surprised if it's opening day. Like I hope they don't do that.
Yeah, I've said, I mean, I think he's got a similar timeline to Tim. Tim debuted, I think, June 10th, and that was 2 years and some change after he was drafted. I don't think that's crazy to say Colson is up by June, middle of June.
I think it's like as soon as, like, if he's down for 2 weeks and he plays like he played in September or in the AFL, he'll just be up like immediately.
Yeah, well, and I don't know, like I'm not super sold on the September thing because like the Arizona Fall League thing, I could kind of make sense of. Like he was there already. He's a year younger. Everyone else is a year, or he's a year older. Everyone else is a year younger. The August and September stuff that gets us hyped up about Colson though, like I don't really see it. Like what is exactly do you guys think he fixed or improved from August and September? Because there wasn't. I know Ian, you brought up like hitting the ball to all fields was something that improved. But like, what specifically do you think he changed, or like, was he better at attacking fastballs, and that's what helped him go to all fields?
Well, one of the things that he really got away from in the beginning of the year that you could you could see it is that he was pull happy for everything. In the later as the season progressed, in the last probably month or so, he started hitting middle away, which is what literally every hitting coach pretty much in the world tells you to do to get back to your center and get you away from being pull happy and messing up your swing. And he started doing that, and he started, hitting the ball right up the middle. And I think that's, more or less what he needs to get back to doing.
Yeah, I'm not seeing like every single at bat, so I know that you have more eyes on it. Just looking at the minor league Statcast data from what they do provide, like August to September, his average exit velocity was 84 miles per hour. Like, like I'm glad that he is making a little bit more contact because that 214 number is ugly. But I again, if he struggles even in April in AAA, like there's no rush. Like, just let him figure it out. Because the White Sox are losing games in 2025 with or without Colson Montgomery.
Yeah,
And
cue
he just seems like
shots.
such an important piece of this entire system.
Yeah, cue shots. And if you watch where the pitchers were pitching him, they were pitching him, hammering him inside all year long. And so he's trying to turn on those pitches, and he's grounding out to first base. He's hitting it 10 feet in front of home plate. So the exit velocity, the average exit velocity is going to go way down because it's all coming out ground balls, you know? So yeah, it was tough, tough year. So hopefully, pitch selection gets better and he can turn it around. We'll see.
Yeah. And we know too, walks on a stack sheet don't mean nothing when you make it to the major leagues, a la Andrew Vaughn. So, I mean, hey,
True.
maybe he comes up here and he's got like, 38 Ks to, or 125 Ks to 38 walks like Brandon Jury.
I don't know. I think his eye's a little bit too good for that. I think one of the things is that, also if you watch him play, you start getting PTSD's flashbacks of Yohan Moncada just watching pitches right down the middle of the plate. And he has a tendency to do that too when he thinks that somebody's going to throw him a pitch. It's like sometimes it looks like it's a little bit of guessing, you know. So I don't know. I think this year is going to be a big deal for Montgomery. Obviously, everybody's been talking about it. Doug says that Montgomery's going to be up in 2 weeks, or he'll be up in September. We've heard from a bunch of other people that he's going to be the opening day shortstop, which, James and I have talked a bunch. We don't necessarily really want to see that. Jim Callis from MLB Pipeline said that that's a bad idea. And, it seems like most people disagree. It's just the people in the team that we hear that have been kind of pushing this narrative, whether it be, them saying that Montgomery's going to get a chance to be the starting shortstop, or whether you see MLB's reporter, Merck, saying that he's going to be out there as the starting shortstop. And it's like, I mean, you can publish that and they might be thinking that. I just don't personally think that it's probably the best thing for him.
I wonder how much it is just kind of hyping up the kid's ego, because you hear him talk after the season And you hear him kind of talk about why he struggled in AAA, and he was like, "Oh, I didn't think it was going to be that big of a competition jump." And it seemed like he really didn't take it that seriously in the first couple of months that he was there. So I don't know. I wonder if it's just kind of placating to an ego, being like, "No, hey, Colson, we want you to come into the best shape of your life because you're gonna get the opportunity to make the team on opening day." And then you have that conversation with them 2 weeks in, being like, "No, we see you being in Charlotte or whatever. But like, you're going to have that opportunity come June or whatever." Like, I don't know. There's something about just, I don't know him well enough to truly judge his personality, but there did seem to be a little air of arrogance for the 22-year-old, which is natural for all of us.
He is like one of the 40-man roster guys, though. So I think like looking at the list of non-roster invite prospect like types that we've all heard of, all these guys, right? I think most of those guys are cut early and they go back to minor league camp. I'm kind of wondering with Colson how long it is. Like, is he in big league camp all spring and then they make a decision kind of like at the end? Because like Sean, you're right. Like he's, regardless of what the three of us like think or want to see happen, I think he's one of the biggest storylines of camp. I think Wednesday when it opens and the rest of this week, you're going to hear about Colson Montgomery trying to win the shortstop job. And that's what everybody's going to talk about. And he's going to be in the lineup in all these games. And, so I think the right thing is for him to go down, but I hate spring training battles. Like this kid could hit 540 in spring training and he makes the team and then he's bad because like none of this really matters all that much.
Well, and two, with the timing, like Mydroth is a non-roster invite, and same with Gonzalez. So obviously, I think Gonzalez is probably the first one to get sent back down to minor camp, and then is it going to be Mydroth or Montgomery? Because then at that point, if you're going to be cutting Amaya, then it kind of seems like there's going to be some sort of prospect, whether it's Baldwin or Colson or Mydroth taking over at shortstop. So like it's fascinating. We're going to know a lot soon. So I think he probably plays the first couple of games at shortstop, at least completely, starting there.
Yeah, they can't quit Jacob Amaya. And also like Jacob Amaya is now Jake Amaya. Did you guys notice that?
No, I didn't notice that.
That was kind of interesting. So they designated Jacob Amaya for assignment and then they claimed Jake Amaya off waivers. So
he is a more mature version.
Yeah, like after going to Baltimore for a couple of weeks. Wasn't it totally like they didn't expect anybody to claim him? Like, oh yeah, we'll slide him through, no problem. And then once he got claimed, they were like, oh, darn it. And then they're like, well, we can definitely get Deloach through. Just kind of trade those guys out.
I would assume so, but also I think they probably were thinking that they were going to get some sort of non-roster invite. That's why they dropped Amaya, and then what? Tim signed.
That makes sense.
I think they had floaters or feelers out there to certain veterans on NRIs, and they just didn't land any of them, and then it kind of just fell into their lap that Amaya came back to them. So I don't know if it wasn't Amaya and Amaya was kept by Baltimore, maybe they go out and get a different middle infielder, but I think they were just in the market and Amaya was cheap.
What do you, Ian, we haven't talked about this. What do you guys think about the Oscar Colas news?
I've seen him play first base.
Yeah, not good, right?
I don't think it's a great idea, especially in a major league role. I think it's a fairly terrible idea. Me and you had this conversation. You said, well, he's left-handed. And I said, I don't care. Give me somebody that can play baseball. You have a right-handed first baseman that we know has absolutely no character concerns, who is a power-hitting right-handed first baseman sitting in the minor leagues that can do what Oscar Colas can do at minimum, because as you've seen from Oscar Colas, every time since his advanced A, ever since then, we've been waiting for him to take off, and it just hasn't happened. Tim Elko is at least, putting up a 340 OBP. He's put up better numbers than Oscar Colas every time. And I don't care that he hits left-handed. Doesn't make any difference to me. Give me somebody that can play baseball. That's just my opinion.
I think it's worth kicking the tires on, but I I don't know how much faith there is. When you look at what he did against fastballs in the minor league, like 259 average, 389 on base percentage, and then a 420 slugging, only 6 barrels on 900 pitches, which is brutal. And the whiff rate isn't terrible, 22%. But I mean, it's nothing spectacular. It doesn't seem like the guy that was promised that, Rick was nervously holding his coffee at for the winter GM meetings, being like, yeah, it's going to be our starting right fielder. I don't see it with Colas. And then also too, I mean, there was such a gap between him playing first base. It was him playing it in Cuba, him playing it in Japan, pandemic, no first base until last year, and it was only 2 games. So, I mean, maybe he needs seasoning, but I mean, that's what spring training's for, and hopefully not too many games are broadcasted, because I don't need to see Colas try to fumble it first.
I think it's kind of what you said earlier. Like, they don't have a backup first baseman. He's on the 40 man, so they're going to see if he can do it, because like they need to find 13 players. And like 2 weeks ago, I would have said this guy got DFA'd, because all I've heard about is how Getz doesn't really like him. But then I heard from someone that like he was part of Venable's like player tour, and Venable kind of likes him. So whatever that means, like he'll be in spring training because he's on the 40 man and whatever.
Well,
Like,
and most of the talk's probably just because they cut DeLoach, and they were probably just weighing between the 2 lefties that are minor league outfielders. Hey, what could you give us? They probably think Oscar could give him first base and DeLoach couldn't. DeLoach also sucked. DeLoach had like a 32% whiff rate in the International League.
well, he's also back, by the way, because he cleared waivers.
Right.
So,
but yeah, I mean, maybe Colas would have gotten some interest from like the Pirates or Colorado.
yeah. So we can like alternate this. I know we don't have much more time, but we can. So what do you think? Like, what's a successful 2025 look like for this team?
I don't even think you can go by wins, because if this team goes 62 and 100, I'll be shocked. There's no way they're improving by 21 games. If they're around 110, walking more, committing less errors, I'll be happy. I think that's the biggest thing about Fuller's introduction is let's actually look like hitters up there. Let's not go consistently, out of innings in 12 innings or less, or 12 pitches or less. Especially on the defensive side, let's be able to talk to one another and call one another off. Like, that'd be beautiful. As long as it's like a cleaner 110 loss season, I'll be happy. Let's see some improvement, and let's see guys actually buy into Will Venable. The record doesn't matter too much, because also we want the number 1 pick. So
we definitely do. But like, how many guys do you need to have that are like not necessarily on your next good team, but you're at least factoring into like, okay, 20? Because I think like, look, I think it's easy to look ahead to 26 and think like Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith are going to be in the rotation. How many of these young hitters like look like guys that could be on your next good team? I think that's the most important thing. Like, if there's like 3 guys right on this team that you're like, man, these 3 guys might be on our next good team, I think that's a win personally.
And I don't think any of those guys will be on the opening day roster, because I think that's Colson, Caro, Teal. I think those guys end up being in the minors. I don't know how you guys feel specifically about Caro and Teal, but especially with Teal not really lighting up AAA in Boston, give him all the time in Birmingham, give Caro all the time in Charlotte, then move Caro up, because it seems like he'll be ready-ish by like June, and then you can give Teal all the time in Charlotte and AAA to build up. But I mean, the names that we wrote down: Tice, Vargas, Robert, Benny, Slater, Talkman, Amaya, Sosa, Vaughn, Rojas. None of those guys are going to be on the next like championship White Sox team. And it's really just dependent on them getting something from Robert. It's dependent on them not paying any of that salary and them getting 2 prospects for Robert. Doesn't have to be 2 top 10 prospects. If it's 1 top 10 prospect and then a flyer that you like a Wikelman Gonzalez that maybe fell off after a bad year, like, I'm cool with it. But taking on no money and having people take on Luis Robert fully, I think is the biggest thing, at least for 2025, because again, I don't know when these guys are going to be up, the guys that are actually going to be a part of that next championship window, if there is one ever.
Who are you excited to see? Just I guess I don't know how long these guys are going to be around in spring, right? But does any, like, out of the prospect type guys?
Well, yeah, I like the ones that are actually going to be in camp. I'm excited to see what Braden will do. Again, we haven't seen him play baseball since the fractured ankle at Texas A&M. So anything that he'll show will be interesting. I think Lepicius could be interesting. I don't know how interesting he could be coming over from the Dodgers and the Tigers, but maybe he gets a shot. I don't even think he's a prospect or what you were asking for. But I think for guys outside of the non-roster invite camp, I think I'm interested obviously in Wilco, because how could you not be everyone's favorite Riku, because it seems like he's going to be a major league player. I think that he's probably our next left fielder once Benny's gone. And whenever that is, this year, this offseason, next offseason, I think Nishida is going to have a shot to at least be our next left fielder. And then the other two, Bonnemer and Larson, just because those seem like they can define how good this last draft was, and we really know nothing about them. How good is Shirley at getting prep players? Because, hey, if I saw somebody that was 6'9", throwing 97, I'd want to draft them too. So I don't know how special that Schultz pick was. The Colson one's kind of fading out a bit. Like, what can he find at that prep level? And can they find, especially a shortstop, like a true guy that can stick at shortstop finally in the draft? Like, that'd be huge for the team. So those are the guys like I'm interested in. Gonzalez is interesting too, just because he's a former first rounder, but it seems like, he's kind of in the Amaya build that if he's able to hit well enough, his glove will kind of carry him at a major league level.
All right, then. You good, James? All right. Well, thanks for hopping on with us tonight, Sean. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to let people know where they can find you?
Yes, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday right now on the CHGO Sports YouTube channel. You can listen to the 30-minute CHGO White Sox show. It's different. That's it. I'm working on slogans.
It's different.
It's different. There's an exclamation.
I like it.
Yeah.
At Sean_W_Anderson on the X/Twitter. Thank you so much for hopping on, Sean. And I'm going to walk us out, guys. You have been watching/listening to the FutureSox podcast. If you are listening to this in podcast form, know that you can find us every Sunday night, except for tonight, of course, at 8 p.m. on YouTube and the Purple app. You can also find this podcast along with all our written content at FutureSox.net. If you are looking for White Sox prospect highlights, you can find them on X at FutureSox and now also here on our YouTube channel. If you love the content and want to support us here at FutureSox, there's a link to our Patreon in our channel description and at FutureSox.net. You can also toss up a super chat on our YouTube stream. Also, don't forget to like this stream and subscribe with notifications so you know when we're going live while helping us in the worldwide web algorithms. My name is Ian Eskridge at Daily White Sox. He is James Fox at JamesFox917. We appreciate all of you guys. Thanks for listening. So tomorrow, James and I will be recording with Baseball America's Ben Badler, which will come out later this week. On Wednesday, Danny Miller is back with Hot Takes and Heaters after a little bit of a hiatus with his new partner, Jacob Thome. So you guys hop on there and give those guys a welcome. Give them a watch, 8 o'clock at here on Wednesday night. Thanks for coming and hanging out, guys. We appreciate you. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for all the chat questions and all that good stuff. We will catch you guys next week. Thank you very much. Have